Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Abdullah Samir podcast with your friendly neighborhood ex-Muslim, Abdullah Samir. Although some of you right now might be thinking I'm not so friendly, I'm kind of mean, especially against Hindus. So this is why I wanted to have this conversation. Initially, it was going to be me and Intro decided and suggested actually to invite Farhan. Farhan is an ex-Muslim Hindu. And as well, I was on the Brown Pundits podcast yesterday with Mukunda, who also has his own podcast called Miru Media. And so he's Hindu. So we have two Hindus and two ex-Muslim atheists, I guess, two atheists and two Hindus here. We're going to have a variety of views, and we're going to try to, talk about what happened. Did we cross the line? Did we go too far? Should we stay in a lane and stuff like that? Before we start, though, I want to say that from my perspective as an ex-Muslim atheist, someone that was Muslim and became atheist, I actually do think there's a lot of good things in Hinduism, and I think that when you compare Hinduism and Islam, I do think that there's definitely obviously bad things in Hinduism as well, but there's many beautiful things in Hinduism, many things that you don't find in Islam. For example, the whole perspective of focusing on the mind, on what's going on inside your head. Mindfulness is something that you find in Eastern religions. The whole idea of meditation, it's something that it didn't come from Prophet Muhammad, even though some people will say, well, Prophet Muhammad was meditating. Even my dad tried to get me to meditate. He said, well, Prophet Muhammad was meditating. And I was like, with my Salafi glasses, I'm like, no, but he didn't meditate after that. He was doing the namaz, the salat, right? So I'm going to do the salat, right? And of course, based on how you do the salat, maybe there's some meditative sort of benefits, but it's not the same because you're standing there, you're reading Quran, you're basically reading his words. It's not the same thing as meditating where you're focusing on your breathing, you're just being at one in the moment. It's totally different, and you don't find that in Islam. Although of course there are aspects to that. Sufism has a lot of influence from Hinduism and these Eastern religions, so so-called Eastern religions, so you would find it there. But overall, I think we would all agree that there's certain things, even the sexuality concept, the fact that, the Abrahamic religions tend to be more aggressive when it comes to sexuality. You don't find that with Hinduism as well. You find, for example, some of the temples have like a Hindu goddess and goddesses, having sex. There's not considered to be a problem. It's that prudery is not there. The issue with homosexuality as well, it's not as big of, as far as I know, not as big of an issue. And from what I understand is there's a larger variety of thought in Hinduism. It's not just one thing. It's there's many different belief systems that are kind of like localized that all combine into Hinduism. So I could be wrong about some of these things. So we have people here that we're going to talk about this. And so sorry for the rant. So Intro, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me on. I love your channel. I love the direction it's going in. I love that Farhan is here and our guest. So it can be, balanced viewpoint. It's not necessarily Hindu bashing. And just to clarify to everyone, I have a lot of Hindu friends. I grew up with a lot of Hindus, but this sequence of events which we're going to get into, it shocked me a little bit. So, I am ex-Muslim. I don't have anything against Hinduism, but I just had a problem with how people reacted, and we're going to talk about it.
And Farhan, how's it going? I think you've been a little bit on the periphery here. You haven't seen the whole thing that happened. You've only heard about it. Do you know like the whole story of what happened? You have a little bit of an idea. Like, what's your understanding of the situation?
Good to see you guys. It's always good to see you, Abdullah, and it's good to see you, IntrovertedSmiles. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
And Mukunda, nice to meet you. Namaste. And thanks for having me. No, yeah, I'm familiar with what happened. You're talking about what happened with Armin, right? Like Armin posted Kalima, a picture of her winking, and then there was like subsequent like innumerable individuals who were attacking him and trying to get him banned from Patreon and YouTube and I don't know what else, something along those lines. So I was able to see the comments, and I did hear about some of the reaction that Armin got, and I'm assuming that you're talking about that.
Yeah, and Mukunda, just to have you jump in. So what are your thoughts on the whole thing that happened? If you can just recap from your perspective how you
Sure.
saw this whole thing, and then we can kind of go back and forth a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, people are making this out to be a free speech issue versus issue of bigotry or, I guess, attacking another religion. My take on this is the free speech issue is a non-starter. It is free speech. He should say whatever he wants. He should express however he feels. My larger question is of two forms. One is, what should a person do despite the fact that there is free speech? And second, how should you engage with traditions or ideas or concepts that you have no base of knowledge in, right? So my bigger point, I guess an analogy would be if you were to give a comment about a movie without even watching a movie and say it's good, bad, terrible, just because you think another movie similar to it in concept is similar. So in that sense, like my issue is people can talk about Islam, Christianity if you come or have a basic knowledge in those traditions. But most people that I notice, even amongst the Hindu crowd, are extremely ignorant about what Hinduism is. And by the term Hinduism, fundamentally, I'm talking about what a label that's been put on entire civilization and called Hindu, right? I mean, we don't have the concept of Hindu. We've never used Hindu within our own understanding until probably about like 300-400 years ago. Until that point, no one was known as Hindu within India. They were just various sampradayas or different groups. So I guess that would be one of my primary conversation points here is the lack of understanding, and I guess this goes to the larger perspective of what Twitter does and social media does is fundamentally, I guess, what people are doing is engaging with the lowest common denominator here. It's just like the trolls everywhere. Like half these people that are giving you guys death threats or attacking you, let's be frank, are ignorant freaking morons, right? They're either incels or they're young kids who have no time or have a lot of time just wasting it on the internet. But you guys are way more educated, way more put together, and sometimes I get kind of perturbed by the fact that we get pulled into this nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything to that or say anything?
Yeah, I think, I didn't give my opinion on it. I think I just stated what I thought was going on, right? So, a couple of things, we talk about the types of trolls that there are, the keyboard warriors and stuff like that. But then you got grown men like David Wood, like Apostate Prophet, like Amir Navabi. These are grown men, right? They have a platform, and they're behaving in a way so as to provoke people, right? To incite some type of a reaction. And, you can talk about free speech all day. I'm all for it, right? I mean, whatever you want to express, however you want to express it, you want to criticize something, you want to make fun of something, you have every right to. You shouldn't be criminally prosecuted for it. You shouldn't be killed for it. You shouldn't get death threats for it. But you're going to get a reaction, right? Whether it's a reaction like you got from Mohammad Hijab, or reactions that you're getting from some of these Hindus who write these messages on Twitter and YouTube and so on and so forth. So I mean, I'm not too surprised by that reaction, although I am surprised by the consistency of the amount of people who are reacting in the way that they have. And my initial impression was, wow, this seems very Islamic, or very, like this is blasphemy type of situation. And this is actually, guys, this is my first exposure to the Hindu reaction to what we can quote unquote call blasphemy. I don't even know if it's blasphemy, but this is my first exposure to it as well. So I'm as fascinated and surprised, but at the same time, not surprised in the sense that, of course, people who have emotional ties to their traditions or their ideas, that if you challenge those traditions and ideas, or worse, insult those ideas and beliefs, that you're going to get a negative reaction, simply based on the fact that it's rooted in emotion.
Yeah. Intro, do you want to add anything?
No, I really felt for the Hindu people when they reacted the way that they did, because I know, like, I just learning a little bit about Hinduism, I know how much they revere their gods. But my main message to them is, I don't expect them to understand exactly what free speech is. We have to keep in mind that we're talking about India here, and things are different over there. The culture is different over there. You have to keep that in consideration. You can't expect them to know everything about our laws and free speech and what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. I think there is a culture barrier there. So that's why we have a lot of these trolls like overreacting and giving all these threats and all that kind of stuff. But that being said, my Hindu friends were mocked their whole life. And I was even mistaken for being Hindu my whole life. But I think my message to the Hindu people is that you can't react that way. I mean, if you want people to respect you, you just can't react that way, because people are going to keep at it. They're going to keep poking at you. They're going to keep provoking you. So I would say, use some of that meditation and use some of the things that you learn to be the bigger person. Now, a lot of Hindus have become the bigger person on Twitter, social media. A lot of them were telling me that these people are not representative of Hinduism. And I have, some people from the ex-Muslim community tell me, no, this is Hinduism. It's not Hindutva. And I want to talk about the difference there for a second in this stream, hopefully. But my main thing is not to categorize this as all of Hinduism, because look at someone like Farhan Qureshi. Look at our other guest, Mukunda. So, I just want that message to be crystal clear. These are some Hindu trolls out there. They're not representative of Hinduism.
Well, I mean, I just want to add something. I think a lot of this is also just pure tribalism at the end of the day. This world is becoming more and more bifurcated about what your tribe is. And I think the one true message that if anything can come through Hinduism, is that the only way to rise or overcome tribalism is to go inward, and it's to go deeper inside yourself and find that connection that is beyond human, that is beyond like mammalian species. It's the true nature of what we call consciousness. And by getting there, you transcend. That's the message generally of Hinduism. But the problem is we are still human beings embodied, dealing with the craziness and the maelstrom of our mind and our tribal mentality. So that's something that's always difficult to overcome.
I want to throw in something out there. Like, someone brought it up to me in an email that to them, this is like Black Lives Matter. And I'm not kidding you. He didn't want to be public, but he was like, well, to me, it seems like the problems that you have going on in America with attacking Black people, I feel like you guys did that to us. And so we gathered together, and yes, we said some bad things. He was justifying it. Yeah, we said some bad things, but we're not really physically threatening you. And the justification was astonishing, that he drew a parallel to Black Lives Matter. And it's just like what you were saying, Mukunda. It's like, it's sort of like a self-defense mechanism, and a justification, but I don't fear for my life that a Hindu is going to come and get me. You know what I'm saying?
I want to say that one of the angles that's being put across, and I found this very strange, but I mean, I think we should talk about it, which is that you guys are acting like the colonizers. You guys are acting like you have to remember that India, and this is maybe where we need to put ourselves into a Hindu person's shoes. Hindu person is looking at this and saying, in India, and saying, these guys are mocking idols. We've had so many years of, even to this day, there's still like vandalism of idols in temples. But like, if you look at the history, Hindus were subjugated by these Mughals or whatever. I don't even know the history, but the point is, there is a history there. And so people are bringing it back and saying, you guys are acting just like colonizers with this iconoclasty, whatever it is, and you wanting to desecrate the symbols of Hinduism, and and so we are fighting back now. We're not going to take it. We're not going to let you guys walk all over us, right? You guys are basically being jihadis, or you're doing you still have this jihadi mindset, this Abrahamic mindset. This is what I'm hearing. What do you guys have to say to that?
Farhan, you go ahead first.
Yeah. Fun.
Hang on. Sorry about that. I was waiting for the mute. I mean, In terms of the history of the colonization, whether it's Native American, the whole world has been colonized for centuries. It's only until recent times where we don't have countries taking over one another. But that history has modern day implications, for sure. And so there's a history in India between Muslims and Hindus. And on one hand, it is, it's embedded within Islam to not offend the idols, right? It's in the Quran that you shouldn't, when it comes to the polytheists, when it comes to their deities, that you shouldn't, blaspheme them either, lest, your tradition and Allah is mocked. So it's embedded within Islam. But there still is to use Mukunda's words, a tribal history. And so what oftentimes happens, like, there's a lot of comments on YouTube and Twitter to the effect of this, that they'll say stuff like, he still has an Islamic mentality, he's still Muslim, he still has that Muslim upbringing, and hence that they haven't really changed. And so even ex-Muslims are assumed to be a part of the tribe that is considered, the descendants of the Mughal Empire. Do you guys kind of see what I'm saying? And so even ex-Muslims like Armin or myself or even you guys, there might be some people who are born and raised in India who are Hindu, who might look at us as still, even if, me claiming to be a Hindu, they might still look at me as being of that tribe and be suspicious of my Hinduism, even though, I was born and raised in the United States. And I came to revere the ancestors and the knowledge that they produced, particularly as it pertains to the nature of reality. And so, but from the Hindu nationalist mindset, when they see us, they still see us as Muslims because we come from that background. And I think that, a part of it is a lack of exposure to each other, a lack of exposure to the diversity of human beings that come from different backgrounds, and is rooted in tribalism, like Mukunda said. I do think that it's unfortunate that, ex-Muslims are told that you're still Muslim. Even Robert Spencer made that Twitter post saying basically the same thing. And so I'm going to say one more thing in response to Introverted Smiles real quick. There, and to Abdullah Samir, yes, there's wonderful things that come out of Hinduism, but there's also wonderful things that come out of Islam, and there's wonderful things that come out of Christianity, right? And so when it comes to offending their ideals or dealing with the Muslim community or the Christian community, we should also see them in that same light as well. Like, Hinduism isn't special that in any way. I think that all cultures should be, if you're going to push the buttons and you're going to get into the sensitive, bother their sensitivities, then you should expect a reaction regardless of what community it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the verse from the Quran you were talking about. Don't let people ridicule other people. That one.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. So that verse does exist. The funny thing is, most Muslims don't even know about it, I think. But what they do know much more strongly than this, just to give a little bit of a counter, is the fact that Abraham broke the idols, right? And he put the stick in the biggest one, and he said, "Ask him who broke the idols." Muhammad went and broke the 360 idols from Mecca. Muhammad said that he will kick out the pagans from Arabia, including the Christians and Jews, who he included in the mushrikeen, in the category of those who do shirk with Allah, polytheists, basically, even though they're monotheists, but they're also polytheists. And so we have, I think this is a much stronger tradition than this one ayah, even though this ayah does exist in the Quran. I feel like in the general Muslim sort of understanding, the whole thing about idolatry being bad and evil and horrible, and even, when you look at Islamic law in terms of jizya, there was an argument about whether Hindus can, was it Christians and Jews can be accepted to pay jizya? I'm forgetting now, but there was a disagreement, right, on that too.
I believe so. I mean, I just want to address the point that, you're asking about the colonial mentality. I think there's two different things here, right? There's one, the historic narrative about the relationship between Islam, Christianity, vis-a-vis the colonial empires, and India and Hinduism and so on, which Farhan clearly and succinctly kind of referred to and laid out. But I think the second more important thing is the conversation about, not necessarily about Christianity or Islam, but the the worldview that created atheism that we see today, right? Like even if you consider like the ancient pagan worlds of Greek and Rome and so on, they'd have atheism through and through, but it wasn't the form that we are seeing today in attacking all religions, right? Hinduism and the larger Indian religions have atheism. You should read the works of Jains or Buddhists when they attack Hindu gods. It's way worse than what you guys will say or do. They call them out, they attack them. It's in the scriptures of Jains and Buddhists, and it happens actually in between in the Hindu scriptures, like a text that has focusing on Vishnu will attack Shiva, and Shiva's text will attack Vishnu, and they will have Vishnu killed by Shiva or Shiva killed by Vishnu and showed subjugation. The idea of this was, so in Indian thought or Hindu thought, there's basically really two options for everyone. One is violence, other one is vak, speech, which is why even someone like Amartya Sen, when he wrote the Argumentative Indian, was talking about the tradition. If we have issues with each other, we talk about it, we discuss it, we debate it, we don't engage in violence. So when I'm saying when people say colonizing of the dialogue or atheism coming to Hinduism, what they're kind of alluding to is you are bringing an entire worldview in which your type of atheism developed was a clear reaction to both monotheism of Christianity, monotheism of Islam, and your reactions are very similar to that, right? The Quran is oppressive to you, so you treat the Quran in a very derogatory manner. The difference would be, and people can say, what is Kali Ma or Durga Ma in any of their texts been oppressive about, right? Like you look at them, they're symbols of mostly femininity, of Shakti, of power, of energy, of the supreme being, which they are considered. So it's not that they're being oppressive. The texts that they're in are not oppressive. Now, the response can be a Dalit can say Manusmriti is oppressive to me. And they can burn it. And they do burn it in India. They burn it. They destroy the statues. But there's no repercussion. The repercussion ends up being a conversation or even ignoring completely. So that is the response to the Hindutva people right now is just like the Abrahamic response of atheism to the Abrahamic religions. It is very much Abraham. It is very much, I would say, yeah. I mean, you
Abrahamic response.
Yeah.
So interestingly, yeah. So what you're saying is, if Hindus understood the books, they wouldn't be reacting the way they did to Armin, the way they did react to him.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. I'm saying the tradition itself is open to that kind of criticism. The problem, obviously, is that Hindus, as are human beings, we're no more or less susceptible to the human condition than any other person. The only difference I would say is people that tend to hopefully go down this path of meditation, go down this path of sadhana, end up hopefully being better at controlling their responses and the way they think about the world, because the way these practices are meant to is to address the first line of yoga is chitti vritti nirodha, the cessation of the thoughts of your mind, right? Because we are entirely what we think, how we behave. Our anxiety comes from thinking about all these little things and who we are. It's cut that down, silence it. And that silence, you stop reacting. And that's where the difference would be, I would say.
Right. So when we talk about, what you just said is actually, so you made a couple of really good points. And I do think that I, in some ways, overstepped. And, for me to I quoted this, I think it was a Rig Veda about, it was a poem about this couple, which I didn't know any of this. And it said that women are like hyenas. You cannot be trusted. So immediately I was like, wow, this is terrible. I should share this. It's, got that reaction from me, like, this is crazy. Like, and the type of stuff that we see in Islam, we're going to see in Hinduism too. I'm like, and I made a sort of sarcastic post. I said, maybe we need to reevaluate which is the most feminist religion. And I was being like, I was being sarcastic. I was kidding around. I wasn't saying that Hinduism is as bad in terms of women's rights as Islam. And I don't even know. And I was called out by you on the podcast and other people, Kushal as well, and were very angry at me. Other people got very upset at me too. And they said, you're being an idiot. And I have to agree that I was being a stereotypical atheist, bashing religion at that point. The caricature of atheists, which, Muslims sometimes bring up, they say that you guys don't even understand Islam. Of course, in the case of Islam, I have to laugh at them, because if anyone understands Islam, it would be someone that followed it and was practicing it and believing. Like you cannot say I didn't understand Islam. I mean, that's just ludicrous for someone to say that. But of course, for me to criticize Hinduism, you can definitely say that, and that is definitely the case. I did not understand what I was sharing, and of course, the reaction I got was the reaction I got, and I do agree that that wasn't a wise decision for me to post that. Probably what I should do is, and I mentioned this to you, that if I'm going to be posting any sort of criticism of Hinduism, really I should be leaning on someone that knows Hinduism rather than saying things that I don't really understand. And otherwise, I'm just going to look dumb, which is what happened, right? And of course, like you said, if someone disagrees with that. So this is my question then, when it comes to Hinduism, Farhan or Mukunda, you can answer. Putting aside the Manusmriti, what about the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita? Are these considered these are considered holy books? Like are they considered divine? Like, how would you describe what is the relationship between a Hindu and these holy texts? If the text says, for example, talks about the caste system, or if it talks about women should behave in this way, or men should behave in this way, or you should fast, or you should not eat meat, like, what is the relationship between the believer and the texts? Whoever
I'll
wants.
I'll let Farhan go first. Go ahead,
Farhan. Sure, Mukunda. I mean, I'll just give my 2 cents on it now from a traditional Hindu perspective, and Mukunda can help with this as well. The idea with the Vedas, it was that it was apurushiya, right? That it was something that that was inspired in a way, right? I'll use the word inspiration, but that it flowed through them. I personally just see it as insights that human beings had, right? No different than the Quran, no different than, you can even throw other works of fiction even in there that have morals and principles embedded in the story. So I think that these things are from human minds being inspired by our higher self, if you will. And you can even, if you want to take it from a materialistic perspective, our brains develop a conscience, that develop the higher principles that we as human beings have, and it's coming from that place from within. And so, that's my personal perspective, but I would say that from a traditional Hindu perspective, that these things are considered to be inspired, but maybe the word inspired isn't a good translation of apurushiya, and Mukunda can better help with that.
Yeah, I mean, so Farhan's right. It's called apurushiya, which means not of man. And the reason it's called not of man is not because they are God's word or God's commandments or God's anything. They're because they're considered eternal truths. And by truths, it's a flexible term, right? For example, there's stories within the Vedic corpus. When I talk about the Vedas, you're talking about the 4 primary Vedas. There's Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. And each of them have different mantras and different stories or narratives or poems or whatever you want to call it. They're not like a narrative text in which there is an exposition about what God wants or what the world should be like. The parts that are considered, so that part is called karmakanda, which is what people make ritualized in a liturgy or practice or for chanting. Now there's the other section called Upanishads. The Upanishads are really focused on the nature of the self, nature of the world, nature of what they would call Brahman. Brahman is from the Sanskrit root brih, means that which grows or keeps growing, expanding. So it refers to a being that is not unsimilar to your deep inner self. So it's not the same inspiration, because a lot of times the Vedic text himself, by the way, there's an entire sutta in the Rig Veda called the Nasadiya Sutta, which is the entire purpose of that sutta ends with maybe there's a God above who knows these things, or maybe there's not. Right? It ends with the concept that we have to sit around and think about these ideas. So even within what we call the inspirational Vedic texts, there are different schools that are both theistic and atheistic. Right? So Vedanta, a particular school, is theistic. But theism is not the same theism of Christianity, Islam, or Judaism. It is almost a monism. But then there is Samkhya school of thought, which is basically dual but no God. There is no out-creator God. There's no creating entity. There's no any of that. That also applies for Vaisheshika. And then, so, I mean, we have these schools. So the texts themselves are, and this is why it gets difficult. The difficulty is because there is entire traditions arguing how the text should be seen as inspired or not. Like within my school of tradition, if pratyaksha, which is our epistemology, if your first person experience contradicts the Vedic scripture, first person experience takes precedent. So like if you do experiments, like if the Vedas say fire is cold, but you touch it, it's hot, the fire is hot. The Vedas have to be interpreted in light of experience and reason. So these traditions are entirely embedded within Hindu thought, but this is why it's difficult when you ask the question if they're inspired or not. It depends, and it depends on what context.
So like when guys, can you imagine if Islam had this idea that maybe there's a God, maybe there's no God? Can you imagine there's a school of thought, the skeptic school of thought in Islam? I would pick that. And that goes back to something you mentioned, which is which I just want to elaborate on a bit, which is in Hinduism there is room for atheism. It's not like under Islam at the moment. I do think that the Muslim world is going in that direction where agnostics, skeptics, people that are questioning Islam will be accepted at some point. There was a guy that came on the EXMNA Facebook page, and he actually mentioned, I'm in China, and I'm Muslim, and I can't remember exactly what he said. I drink alcohol, I eat pork, and I call myself Muslim. I don't know what the point is of this ex-Muslim thing. Why do you guys call yourself ex-Muslim? Then the experience he has over there is so different than the Muslim experience in like Canada or Pakistan or basically pretty much the rest of the world, frankly speaking. We don't have space for skeptics. We don't have space for atheists. We just don't have that in a tradition. And although I do think it's going to get to that point, I've heard from Jewish people that I know that, if they go to the temple, the synagogue, and, they'll say things like, yeah, I'm atheist. The people will say, no, you're still Jewish. It's almost seen like you're still Jewish, even if you're atheist, because they also see it sort of like an ethnicity. So I think Islam, will eventually get to that point. We just have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do before we get to that point. Do you guys want to say anything about that before I jump on what the sexy Cali?
Well, yeah, go ahead, intro. I've talked a lot, so go ahead.
No, I mean, I was actually going to like kind of shift gears a little bit. So I don't know if you had something on that point specifically.
Well, yeah, I do think again, Islam, is very, very diverse itself. It depends on where you are and what tradition you're following. Like the Sufi tradition, again, within the Indian subcontinent is very similar in ideas to Vedantic ideas, right? So you have people like, Rumi or Kabir who have, Rumi was very much based in the Islamic world, but Kabir was oscillating between the Hindu world, Sikh world, he was a little before Sikhism, but the Islamic world. Their perspectives on divinity and God and religion are very, very open. It's beautiful stuff if people spend time to delve into it. But I think one of the issues we have today is that a lot of the diversity within Islam is also being destroyed by particular types of Islam that are taking over
Wahhabism.
Yeah, or Deobandi or whatever whatever's going on, right? But yeah, I don't think we should mistake that there is diversity and beauty within Islam in and of itself. That's different from what you guys experienced or what the current world is seeing.
Well, like my question was really is just to like Farhan or Mukunda. It's just, Abdullah Samir brought up earlier about like, just kind of posting that hyena verse out there. I don't think there should be a problem with that. Like if you wanted to make yourself look like an idiot, like me, just like post random verses and be like, hey, look at this. We understand that Hinduism is so diverse. We understand that there's different philosophies. How are we supposed to like bypass all of these people going crazy? That's just my question. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I get the point of what you're posting, but I guess one of my bigger concerns is, okay, so there are a billion people or billion plus people within Islam. Most of them have some sense what Islam is, right? Or the way they practice or the fundamental tenets. Hinduism isn't a doxa faith, or it's not a faith based on doxa or belief. It's a proxy. It's praxis, which is practice, which is half the time people just do the things their parents have told them. They do it, and then they don't know anything around it. And even the West and the rest of the world has no sense of what it is. So when you have a following and you're large enough, you're posting these things without context. The issue is it creates this false equivalence between two different traditions and two different ways of viewing the world. Like the hyena verse that Abdullah posted was a conversation in the Vedic text between Purvas and Urvashi. And it's based on, so Urvashi is this Apsara, or a heavenly nymph, who has a relationship with a man, and she gives him conditions by which they'll stay together. He violates one of the conditions after they have a son. And then she basically says, I'm going to leave you. I'm done. Peace. I'm gone. And he threatens to commit suicide. And one of her responses is, why are you behaving like this? Why are you behaving in this method? Women are like hyenas. You can't have friendships with them. And the reason...
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Like, I understand about understanding context.
Yeah.
You know, I have to do that with Islam too. You know, when ex-Muslims quote a verse, you know, and the Westerner looks at it, they have no clue what's going on.
Sure,
a lot of the time.
I agree.
And then the Muslim has to jump in and explain the context. But like, why are we kind of giving that fair chance to Hinduism as opposed to Islam?
Well,
you know, if we're judging.
Why should it be that? Why should that dichotomy exist? Why can't you give fair context all across?
Well, because like the way I see it, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel like there are different schools of thought in Hinduism, like you said. Some Hindus believe in a spirit and like a holy God and everything, and some of them are atheists, like you said, and have a lack of belief, and they adopt philosophies. So I wanted to ask you, like, where's that split? You know, is it like 50-50 or, you know?
Let me get in here for a minute. Yeah. I had something to say about two different things. First, in pertaining to what IntrovertedSmiles is saying. So no, I mean, I think that we should be critical of and skeptical of all truth claims, and go where the evidence leads us. And in the situation with Hinduism, if you want to throw out verses like that, whether you understand the verses or the context or not, I think if you read something and you have an impression, you have every right to not just question it, but to expose it. Is this what I'm looking at? And let if there's a context, there's a context. But you should be able to criticize and question all of it. You'll be able to find plenty of controversial things in the Hindu scriptures. These are thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. Of course, our ancestors had all sorts of ideas. The question is whether we treat this like the Abrahamic traditions treat their scriptures, and say that no, humanity doesn't evolve, society and culture doesn't evolve, and that we need to apply these verses somehow in a modern context. I think that's what would ultimately be problematic. But if we just look back at our ancestors and realize that there's some true gems, there's some true timeless truths there, there's some gems there, there's some wisdom there. And again, this isn't about being dogmatic or believing in a set of beliefs, you know, like the 6 articles of Iman or the 5 pillars of Islam. For me, Dharma is about seeking, right? And it ends there. Let's not forget about the answers. It's about seeking. And there's different kinds of seeking. There's a scientific pursuit where you're looking at objective reality, and then there's the pursuit of the inner world, which is you working on yourself, your character, your existential questions, stuff like that. And so it's not about being dogmatic or believing in anything as much as it is seeking. And when it comes to criticizing the traditions, of course it should be criticized. Of course you got to ask questions. Of course you got to post verses and say, what does this mean? And that's, like I said, that's just like one example. You could come up with hundreds and thousands.
Yeah, because my main thing is I want to look like an idiot and just question everything, you know. And I think it should be fine for Hindus to respond
absolutely
with what they think is necessary. I just don't want any extremism to breed from like just questioning the religion or even mocking the religion. Like, I mean, you should. I mean, I don't expect you guys to be at a high standard all the time. You're human, but at the same time, you know, at least, you know, realize that there are going to be idiots out there, and you got to know how to handle them.
Yeah, as people are saying, it's it's going to be different in an Indian village. As one comment said, see how an Indian person does not have the freedom to criticize religion without being afraid for his life. This is a good point, and I think this really gets down to the bottom of why Armin Navabi posted Sexy Kali.
Mhm.
Now, the Hindus we have, honestly, it's like night and day. The people I'm talking to, like Mukunda, like Kushal, and these different people, their perspectives are so like, if you look at a video that on Kushal's channel where he had his open dialogue with a bunch of people about this whole thing, Lazib and others from your podcast, and you see the discussion with him, Sham Sharma, and all of these guys, and Vidu Wids, and then you see the comments. The comments were like totally different from the conversation. The comments were, one of the comments said that this is not only about Armin, but this is let's talk about like the thought process. The thought process is that from Armin's perspective is, I am doing this because I believe that no matter what idea you have, whatever religion, whatever belief system, there shouldn't be a red line there when it comes to something public. Now, the difference he's saying is that, when it comes to personal people, like, for example, his mom is not a public figure. She's not an activist. She's obviously died. And, like, desecrating her, it hurt Armin. It did get to him, and it was upsetting because he's a human being. He's not an alien. He has feelings like that. But what he wanted to do was to show that, and the first thing he posted, the Sexy Kali photo, was basically it was an artist rendition, a non-Hindu, that posted it and had made it, and he makes pinups of like all like Wonder Woman and Batwoman or whatever, right? And it was on this, and so he must have Googled for images of Kali, and he found this one, and he posted it, and of course the artist got so many like clicks on it, he just removed it. He actually removed it from his artwork. I guess he didn't want to deal with the repercussion. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be disrespectful, but he did this, right? So it's this woman that has six arms. And so Armin's initial post was, he called her sexy, and this was the initial thing. After that, he did post a lot of other things, which I think, I don't know, I think they went too far, in my opinion. Like, I wouldn't have done it. I do believe that, what he said was like, I'm not even going to say what he said, but like, when this thing started and people started abusing him, and then he started doubling down, I think it just went too far. And some of the things he said, people are asking me, do you agree with him saying, this and that? And I couldn't agree with it. And I don't agree with some of the things he said, but the initial thing he posted, which was not, in my opinion, denigrating, but maybe from the perspective of like someone might have seen him as some colonizer or something, again, we talked about that. It doesn't make any sense, right? What do you guys think about that? Is it okay what he did to post a picture of Kali winking? And, obviously that's not the traditional image of her. A traditional image of hers holding some heads and standing on a demon's body, dead body, and this and that. What do you guys, let's talk about that. Whoever wants to go.
Yeah. I want to say one thing, in terms of the reaction. The silent majority usually doesn't react emotionally. They'll get offended, maybe they won't even get offended at all. Maybe they'll even laugh along with Armin. And so you won't hear from the silent majority who keeps quiet, right? The ones that you will hear from are those that are emotionally triggered by it. And so if there's 11,000 views on that video and 1,000 people comment, those are the 1,000 people that were emotionally triggered by it, felt some type of way. And as you said, when they posted Armin's mother, he felt some type of way about it because he's human. When Mohammad Hijab went after you and Gondol and Apostate Prophet, you guys are emotional creatures. You probably felt some type of way, but your reaction wasn't dramatic for the most part. I guess for you, Abdullah, it wasn't dramatic. I guess Apostate Prophet wanted to eat the Quran, and Armin wanted to piss on the Quran and stuff like that. That you wanted to, that they wanted to stoop down to their level. But the point is that yes, we are human beings, and anything can trigger us emotionally. And when we are emotionally triggered, some of us
are
able to react.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it wasn't to his level. When, like, desecrating the Quran, burning a Quran, a Bhagavad Gita, a Bible, is not anywhere near posting pornographic pictures of someone's mother and or posting a picture of Armin's dead mom, and with some like nasty sexual comments on it. Like, this is far worse than what Muhammad hijab
See,
did.
well,
Go ahead.
So it's not going down to the same level.
It might not be the moral equivalence, right? But the fact of the matter is, when somebody is psychologically and emotionally triggered, regardless of what the cause might be, they are going to react. That's what human beings do when they're emotionally triggered. It doesn't matter whether there's a moral equivalence or not. The fact of the matter is that you have human beings who are emotionally triggered and are reacting. I'll go ahead and let go of the mic.
Yeah, I mean, I think Farhan's on point here. I mean, look, I think within there's a video game out there called Smite. Okay, it's a multi online player game in which you can play Kali, Ganesha, Vamana, Rama, a bunch of different Hindu gods. You play them in a game as if they're equivalent to Zeus, Thor, Odin. And so, but you know who's not on there? Jesus Christ isn't on there. Mohammad isn't on there.
Yeah.
But also what doesn't happen, there's no riots on the streets of in anywhere in India or any Hindu place attacking this particular game. The reason is fundamentally like you can post whatever you want. I mean, I think that freedom is fundamentally there. But if you're going to post things and start a least common denominator kind of game, that's what you're going to get. That's just exactly what, I mean, I'm not making any equivalence between posting the Kali versus posting, your wife or Armin's mom, any of that. But that's because you feel a certain way about your mother. You feel a certain way about your wife. And these people, this is all emotion, whether something is real or not in a physical, tangible sense, there's an emotion attached to it, right? Like if I were to take, I don't know, like desecrate George Washington statue that so many people feel connected to, people react a certain way. And maybe you should not react that way, but you're going to. I mean, again, we're going down to the fundamental idea of David Hume's is distinction. Like we just are behaving in a certain way. There's no concept of should here. Like they're two different things.
Well, my question is like, why were so many of them like for desecrate the Quran and just like, just for it, and then all of a sudden when it comes back to their God, they react in that manner. I just
because I think they're idiots. I mean, let's just be frank. They're not, number one, being consistent. Number two, like, okay, I think even the desecration of the Quran, like I'm not Muslim, whatever. I think it's a terrible thing. I think it means something to some people. It was oppressive to you guys. So you have a certain emotional reaction to the Quran, but a lot of people don't. And I think to criticize it is perfectly fine. Like even burning is fine at a level of like, should it be allowed? Yes. Do I think it's in good taste? Maybe not. And that can differ between people, right? Like, and that I think issue is kind of what we're talking about here is it should be allowed, but these people reacting are first of all inconsistent, and number two, their mental equivalency is like a toddler. It's like, you did this to me, I'm going to do this to you. It's like this, but that's the reaction that I'm seeing amongst to be honest, the ex-Muslim atheist community in regards to all these things, and David Wood and these people, right? It's this childish reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got a response from I'm sorry to say, someone has an Indian flag on his. I posted, what happened to Muhammad hijab? I haven't seen him on Twitter. He said sleeping with your mom. That was his response. Like,
what an ass. I mean, it's one thing to say that amongst your friends, right? Like we can joke amongst each other's friends. Like if we knew each other well, be like, your mom jokes are totally fine.
One thing I want to bring up, guys, on a serious note is that this actually put some fear into me. Like how many of them there are just reacting this way. Like I'm trying to figure out in my mind, is it just tribalism? I'm trying to get the common denominator here because the thing is, man, they are just saying, you are always a jihadi. You are always a Muslim. And that's a dangerous mindset to have. Like for someone,
there's a good population of Hindu people that are anti-Muslim, and not just, they're not just against Islam, they're just anti-Muslim, and that is a real problem. That's a fundamentally huge problem, and I think like they hide behind the the concept that we're just criticizing Islam. And this happens all the time. People are criticizing Muslims.
Is this Hindutva? Can we narrow it down to Hindutva?
I don't think it's Hindutva. I think it's Hindus that are just idiots. Hindutva on the whole, by the way, is a very different phenomenon. I mean, and that we could get into, but that's a different thing. Like some Hindutvas, you're right. Some Hindutvas are like that. But for example, Kushal, like, he's Hindutva. He's a BJP guy. He's not like this. There's a huge contingent in the RSS. People will say there's Muslim people in the RSS. There's a Muslim, entire division. There's a Christian division. But that's not the point. I mean, we're making boogeyman out of nothing in this sense. But the real problem is people that have these bigoted ideas about Muslim, the other, the Muslim colony over there. Like in most of these, if you go to cities in India, there are colonies where Muslims are, right? That's where they practice Eid, they do Ramzan, they have, goats killed there. If you go to Delhi, there's a section. The middle class lives everywhere, but the poor Muslims live in a certain area. And just like in some ways you treat a different people, that's how you talk about them. It's terrible.
Can I ask Farhan a question? Can I make an equivalency of Hindutva and Salafism, or am I just wrong there?
Isn't it more like Islamists? Like Hindutva means people who want to establish the Hindu nation, right? So it's more like Islamism.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Farhan.
I mean, if I can, I could go ahead and give it a shot. Now, here's the thing: you're talking to somebody who's born and raised in the United States, right? So I'm just looking at this from a sociological and psychological perspective. When we look, I think it has to deal with temperament more than anything else. When you look at certain people who are right wing, right, traditionalists, nationalists, something along those lines. Think Donald Trump reporters, Republicans. Think the Brexit guys in Great Britain. Think Salafis who are hardcore purist, literalist, traditionalists, right? There are plenty of Republicans who are chill. I know many of them, and they're even Donald Trump supporters. They have ideals about the freedoms that the liberals are trying to take away. They have ideas about the economy. They have conservative moral values, and it ends there, right? That's why they support the Republican Party and Donald Trump over, the Democrats and liberals who they think are, who they have problems with. And so same thing with conservatives across the board. I think that they are temperamentally conservative, right? Just like there's people who are temperamentally liberal. We're not even talking about philosophy at this point. Mm-hmm. And they come from a tradition, right? They have their founding fathers, they have their history, their scriptures, what their founding fathers fought for. In the United States, they fought for the freedom, they fought for capitalism. How dare communism and socialism come to this country when our founding fathers, died for this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so every nation and every culture and every tradition has this history. And I think that there are those who are temperamentally deranged, if you will, that are unable to tolerate perspectives that challenge the demographics, that challenge the mainstream ways of doing things, that challenge the traditions or try to change the traditions. And so it's true that there are some people who are literalist. They want to take things literally. There are people who are hardcore traditionalists. This is what our founding fathers and ancestors believed. So we have to believe what they believed and not try to be innovative ourselves. And I think that occurs across the spectrum when it comes to conservatives, and it's a temperamental thing. Definitely. Yeah, go ahead, Mukunda, or anybody else.
I mean, do we want to talk about Hindutva? I don't know if I really care to talk about Hindutva that much. It's not.
So let's talk about blasphemy then, and freedom of expression. So what Armin did is he did something that offended people for whatever reason, whether he's coming from a Muslim background, ex-Muslim background. People responding to him sometimes, it's funny. They respond to him by posting Aisha and Mohammad memes, which is hilarious because he posts those same memes too, and he's been posting all those. But what they've done, what they did, we talked about the other things they did, but what they also did is they tried to get court cases against him. So now he's not even joking. He's like, I don't think I can go to India anymore. That's off his list because of blasphemy law. And when we talk about freedom of expression, like this is what we mean. Freedom of expression means the freedom to say something without being like arrested or jailed or fined or anything like that. It means that you can talk about ideas. You can say that your politician is ugly or dumb, or I don't like him, or he's a bad politician. You draw pictures of him, whatever, all of that stuff, which we don't have that freedom in most of the Muslim countries. Like if you go to most Muslim countries, you just don't have that ability to mock the leaders. You'll just go to jail. So it's not just Islam; it's also the political, the political power, the political structures. And at the same time, the irony is that they're actually going after not just Armin, but his followers and Atheist Republic members in India, not just Atheist Republic members, but those who have even gone and supported him in any way. And he said the reaction he's seen, like, this is the only time in his life, he said, that he's actually considered that, like, did I make a mistake doing this? Like, he never expected it to be this explosive. Like the amount of pushback he got to the people in India, his followers, even his well-wishers, even Kushal, who is a Hindu and who actually he doesn't even like what Armin is doing. He doesn't like, just like you, Mukunda, he doesn't like the Quran desecration. He doesn't like, the any of this stuff. And they're actually photoshopping his mom and his wife and whatever. Like, and he's one of them. He's living in India. He's like you said, he's BJP. Like, what the hell is this? I mean, this is just insanity. Like, we thought, like, and yet they keep telling us, oh, we don't burn cities. Ali Rizvi asked Armin, if you were in India right now, how would you feel? Mm-hmm. And he didn't want to admit it, but he'd be freaking shitting his pants. I mean, to put it bluntly, like, he might be dead. I don't want to say for sure he'd be dead, but the reaction from these people, the anger, the visceral hatred that's coming out, like, I don't know if we can just shrug it off and just say these are trolls.
No,
I feel like these people, if he was in India, he'd probably be dead right now.
Well,
that's what I think.
I don't. Okay, I mean,
I'm just guessing. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm not going to hypothesize about that. But we had people like MF Hussein, who you talked about, who did draw something. He lived in India for the rest of his life after. There was no issue. I mean, so the issue right now, to be honest, is the legal part, which is Article 295 of the Indian Constitution in 1949, which was put into the Constitution at that time period. It was somewhat from it was a colonial background law that was put in place primarily due to, Muslim Islamic intervention, because they did not want the Prophet to be, slandered, blasphemed against, whatever. They wanted that to be the protection there. What has happened was over the past 20 years, and by the way, this law was very rarely used until the past 20, 30 years. Now everyone's using it under the sun. It's a terrible law. It's a terrible, and it's called the anti-religious sentiment law. So if you hurt anyone's religious sentiment, you can be booked on this. It's a stupid, idiotic law. And let's be frank, India is not a place that has free speech. It's not like free speech like we consider in the US. It does have more free speech than many other countries, but it's not free. So I don't know about, there's a lot of people within in the country of India that are atheists, that talk against Hinduism or this or that. Most of them, nothing happens to. Like 95, maybe 99% of them. Yeah, I do think once in a while some crazy mofo does something. But on the whole, I think people are relatively safe there.
Intro or Farhan, you want to say
just
anything?
real quick? I just want to add the quick comment of, it just scares me how Hindus are saying Islam kind of got it right when it comes to ex-Muslims.
It's so dumb.
I mean,
so
it's just this, I know we could laugh and say this is dumb, but I really think there's some kind of thing that we should be worried about here. I don't know.
No, but I think Farhan is correct here. He's talking about the silent majority that aren't posting or responding, which, by the way, is most of India. Most of India is the silent majority.
But we can say that about most Muslims too, and Islamists.
No, but
right, exactly. So introverted, I would agree with that. So when it comes to the silent majority of Muslims, most Muslims are just like any other family. They want to make money, they want to put food on the table, they want to just live peacefully, type deal. And and that's, and the same is the case for Republicans. I brought up Republicans. There's plenty of conservative folks in America who are proud of what their ancestors did, proud of where they come from, and are, they don't hate the other. They're simply proud of where they come from. And I think that and that's why for me, I mean, I was just as disgusted. Well, I mean, I was disgusted by apostate prophet and David Wood, and Armin Navabi in terms of how they were desecrating the Quran. I thought that it was immature, unproductive. But here's the thing: I get one point that they're trying to make is that these are holy to you, not us, so we could do whatever we want to do. And from a legal point of view, in terms of criminal prosecution, in terms of death threats, I absolutely agree with them. Go ahead and do you. But when you do these types of things, you are intentionally provoking people emotionally, right? Whether you think that their emotional reactions are justified or not, doesn't matter. These are human beings with a temperament that does not tolerate being offended, right? We have the freedom to offend people. We can do it racially. We can do it with ideas and religion, political parties, people's family members, whatever. We have the freedom to do that totally. But the moment that you decide to become obscene, the moment you decide to trigger people emotionally, you're going to get a reaction. It's a self-fulfilled prophecy.
I mean, just to add on to this, so let me give you context in India. You guys know the state Tamil Nadu, right? So one of the first revolutionaries in Tamil Nadu was a guy named Periyar, who is this Tamil guy, atheist, rationalist, communist. He has said things worse than Armin Navabi, and his political party has run that state for 50 years or 60 years, talking shit on Hindu gods and Hinduism. He said one of the statements he made is, if you see a Brahmin on the street, kill him, go into his house, destroy their idols. I mean, and his party is in power there.
Okay, but hold on a second. That's straight up. Like, if he's saying kill them, I mean, you should be in jail. You should be in jail. That's not acceptable.
It's not acceptable. But what I'm saying is, he said that his party that was part of him, the DMK, has been running Tamil Nadu for decades.
I don't get it. How can he say you should kill them? That's hate. That's straight up hate speech. That's
well,
like
apparently no one thought so and did it. So I don't. This was in the past, obviously, but I'm just saying the political party.
But for that, I go back to the fact that when Hindus do it, it's okay. But if Muslims or ex-Muslims do it, we're colonizers. We're here to recolonize India or something. Like, maybe it's who's doing it is the problem here. You know what I mean? Like, it's the intent. It's the intent to desecrate the gods from an outsider that's seen far more offensively than what, like, Hindus sexualizing their own gods. That's not even a problem.
We have to keep in mind about the Islamic invasion of India and how the Hindus view that. I think that's a big factor in how they think and how they, view us. They probably still feel hurt over that. And a lot of Hindus have told me that, like, we're still hurt and recovering from the Islamic invasion of India. And my response is like, I mean, I get it. It's something that happened in the past. You should never forget it. But you can't.
But the funny thing is, you guys are us.
That way.
Yeah,
we are you guys. You guys are us. We are you guys. I mean, it's not like you're Middle Eastern and you kept that entire empire there. You guys are all Desis, right? I'm just making that point.
Yeah, my ancestors were probably Hindu. I mean, people tell me that your ancestors were converted by the sword. I don't even know if my ancestors were converted by the sword. How do you know that? Like, you don't even know that. But I want to go back to one thing. Okay, actually, Farhan, go ahead.
Just a quick second. Yeah, the Mughal invasion is one aspect of it, and I think that the division of the country into Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. It was another. I think that the partition and the amount of bloodshed that went into that, the amount of fear and hatred that went into that time period definitely has a lot to do with it as well. And there's other socio-political factors like Kashmir, like conversion. The Muslims with, like, Dr. Zakir Naik, they want to convert everybody, to Islam. And so I think that are different factors at play there, and there was also the how jizya was applied in Bharat as well. And so there's different historical factors that have brought about clashes between Hindus and Muslims. And then there's also another factor of what is pure and what is impure, you know what I mean, in terms of interaction of various castes and religions. So I think that there's so many things at play there that fuel that can often fuel the rivalry and hatred.
But I see it more with the Hindus as far as clinging on to the past. Why is that?
I mean,
get what I'm saying?
Farhan, you want to say something? I think you're on mute. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what you've seen in Introverted Smiles, but if you've seen, for example, hatred that does come from Pakistanis, or I guess I could speak, coming from Pakistani background, is that Pakistanis and Muslims have said some vile things about Hindus as well. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I don't have statistics in terms of, hate crimes and stuff like that in India, so I can't speak to it. But I do know that there is vitriol that I hate to say that comes from both sides, because it might be disproportionate. I'm not 100% sure.
I think a lot of it, intro, is it's a nationalist sentiment, right? Like this. I think it has to do with the fact that a lot of these people are very ultra nationalists, and they want to go back to a great kingdom, the same way that you see, the great Hindu kingdom. They're thinking of, Hindu civilization, Indic dharmic civilization. The amount of people I had telling me that India is not okay. I had more people telling me India is not does not welcome ex-Muslims and Muslims from Robert Spencer's page. Not after this whole thing with Armin, but more from Robert Spencer's followers. Don't mind telling me I'm not welcome in India. And you were told that too. You're like, I don't care. I'm not even going to India anyways.
No, I mean, just on that point, Samir, I want to bring up this, right? Like, so one of the issues a lot of Indians have is also the way the constitution in India has been structured, right? Like, so the personal laws in India are separated based upon religion. So Muslims have a separate personal law. Mm-hmm. They follow the Sharia, or if you're, Shia, you follow, whatever your tradition is. They have different boards that govern your personal laws. There are the mosques, the masjids are all run by Islamic boards, not the government. But the temples, all the temples in India are run by the government. The law in India for Hindus is run by Congress, but the personal laws for Hindus is run by Congress. Like, for example, let's use this. In India, as a Muslim man, you can have 4 wives, and you can do, until recently, you could do the talaq, and then to get the divorce, right? But a Hindu, in that sense, couldn't have 4 wives, or a woman couldn't have 4 husbands, or, you have to follow the same procedure that the civil law. So there was anger towards that. There's anger towards the fact that there's different levels of citizenship, that the Hajj was also subsidized, that educational systems, if you're a Muslim and you build the educational system, you can do it however you want. Hindus couldn't do it. So there is historical, political issues going on there that play a role. It's the way India. I mean, in some sense, I get it. I get the need to protect some level of minorities, right? I understand that.
I think it's so dumb. It shouldn't be that way. Like, everyone should have the same secular law. Like, you don't give 4 wives to Muslims only, or you have men converting to Islam just to have multiple wives.
But this is the funny part. The BJP is trying to get a uniform civil code. They're the ones that, I mean, again, they removed talaq. They removed, so they're trying to get the uniform. I mean, BJP has a lot of flaws, and Hindutva has a lot of issues. Some of the issues I do agree with, like the universal civil code for everybody, uniform civil code. Right, or just having the public-private distinction amongst religion. Religion is no longer the purview of the government; it shall be private. But these are all things that India's still dealing with. That was just my point.
I wanted to, before we get back to this topic, because we kind of got carried away. I wanted to respond to Farhan, what you said about apostate prophet and ripping the Quran. Intro, you actually explained very well why you actually think that, like, what he did, from the context of why he said he was ripping the Quran in this particular case, made sense. You want to explain that?
Oh, yeah. Like, so basically, I support apostate prophet's blasphemy because he attached a context and condition to it, saying, what's worse, me ripping up this book or apostates being killed? And I think it's a brilliant way to showcase your blasphemy and to stand up for something, rather than having a far right-wing group. And I know Robert Spencer criticized Abdullah, Samir, and I for this, a far right-wing group just kind of, burns the Quran while crimes in Sweden were going on, and we were just saying it wasn't wise. But I think for Apostate Prophet's case, I support everybody's right to do whatever they want. Period. I'm American. I know my laws and rights and everything. But as far as Apostate Prophet attaching that condition, I completely agree with that, because it shows that, hey, which one are you going to stand for? Pieces of paper. I understand their sentiments, and Muslims hold the Mus'haf very dear. Or are you going to hold killing someone, in a higher regard for their beliefs? I think it could be simplified just like that. Some people disagreed with the condition that he put, but I think it's a brilliant way to move forward and have Muslims think about what they're really following.
Yeah, I think from that context, that's a brilliant sort of protest. It's like you're protesting and you put, and as angry as you feel now, oh dear Muslims, like at the same time, imagine how we feel when you are actually saying our blood is halal in an Islamic state. To this day, I have a family member. I mean, it breaks my heart to say this. I have a family member who wrote a post on a website that says he did this before I left Islam. Okay. So he didn't do this after I left Islam. That would have been very weird. But anyways, he wrote this thing that said that apostates deserve to die in an Islamic state because that is what Allah and His Messenger taught us, and we have to accept what Allah and His Messenger taught us, and we don't have any right to question that. Submitna wa ta'na, we hear and obey. So if we might not understand it, the wisdom of it, but this is the case. And I actually emailed this individual and I asked him to remove it, and he did not remove it. And he's like, I didn't say anything wrong. Like it's right what I said. Now he's not saying, again, I have to say this so people don't misunderstand. Nobody's saying that there should be vigilante terrorism in Canada to kill apostates. That's not what was saying. That's not what he's saying. That's not what Ali Dawah is saying when he said ex-Muslims should be killed. He's not saying in UK. He's saying in an Islam. But even then, it's such a horrible thing that you can, with a straight face, like you can just say that, like without any hesitation, without any shame. You're just saying that, like shame on you. Like, so from that context, I think it's brilliant. Like Intro was saying, from that context, ripping the Quran is brilliant. I don't think I could do it myself. I don't know. It's just not something I could do. But like, people that, if they're willing to do that, I mean, from that context, I think it makes sense. Farhan?
All right, if I can respond to that. So nobody is saying it. Nobody's trying to be a moral authority here and tell people. At least coming from my end, I'm not trying to be a moral authority and tell people what to do and what not to do. Right? I'm only defining for myself what I think is a reasonable approach of engagement, and lowering myself to deal with the most emotionally disturbed people in the Muslim community isn't just wise. That's not my perspective, right? But as far as what Apostate Prophet wants to do, what Armin wants to do, what anybody else wants to do, that's their prerogative. I'm not here to judge nobody. I don't think Mukunda or anybody else wants to judge what they choose to do and how they choose to lower themselves to make a certain point or to get a point across. I'm just saying that for me, and I think that for a lot of people, that we wouldn't lower ourselves to provoke the most emotionally disturbed people in a community. That's just me.
Yeah. What do you think about the argument, Farhan, that when people like Armin, and so I have sort of moved a little bit along. I mean, if you see if you see me like 2 years or 3 years ago, I was pretty much completely against this stuff. I'm like, this is wrong. I used to say that. The reason I switched is after talking to Ali Rizvi and Armin, and they kind of made me realize that by the fact that they do these things, it actually creates a space for people like us to do criticism, because the fact that people are doing much worse than that, and they're actually like let's look at Charlie Hebdo. When Charlie Hebdo happened, those cartoons were published. The nobody wanted to publish those cartoons. They were actually like, we had non-Muslims that were, instead of standing up, they would actually criticize the same way that I kind of did with Sweden. The same sort of reaction, like, why did they post those cartoons? Look what you guys did. Kind of blaming the victim, right? They were saying, you guys provoked these. It's again the bigotry of low expectations. You've provoked these bad Muslims. Look what you did. And it's in a way it's true. I mean, it's a difficult thing, right? I mean, this is where the nuance comes in, where people just, they want to like cut what you say in a 1 minute clip and they just want to like blast you for it. But there's a lot of nuance needed here. Like when Sam Harris had the conversation with Peter Singer, and Sam Harris asked Peter Singer, who was a famous utilitarian ethicist, what do you think of drawing the cartoon? Should they have drawn it? Peter Singer said no. And Sam Harris like, what? No, why? He's like, well, look at the consequences. I'm a consequentialist. The consequences are all of these people were killed and embassies were burned in Pakistan and this and this and this. And Sam Harris's counter to that was, well, if we just give in to that, then they're just going to keep pushing, right? And that's kind of, I think that's where, again, where Armin was coming with the whole sexy Cali thing. He was trying to say that, you know, this is my space, my Twitter, and it was unfortunately being pushed into other people's Twitter feeds that didn't want to see it. And that's where all this craziness happened, because that's just the nature of the internet. It's like a giant, like, you know, you have your living room, right? Intro is in his house, I'm in my house. When I post something, I might, you know, I'm thinking of it as my space, my Twitter, but then someone shares it or takes a screenshot of it, and now it's going outside and outside and outside. And now, without any sort of like, you know, power of my, like, I feel like with the India thing, I've completely lost control of the narrative. Like never before. There's been cases where people have accused me of things, like certain Muslims have attacked me and said certain things about me. I've responded to them, and I'm able to respond to them, and my position was out there. With this thing, it's just exploded like so big that every day I'm getting people like trolling me, attacking me, insulting me. Like even on something that's related to Islam, I'm getting Hindus saying you're a mom. It's like, oh, what the heck? I've just lost control of the whole situation, right? But yeah, just to kind of, what do you guys think about all that? Like,
Farhan, go ahead first, man.
So with regards to you know, Hindus attacking you or whatever, listen, I mean, I've seen all the Twitter posts, and I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a lot of Twitter posts. I've seen a lot of YouTube posts as well.
Sorry,
and
so
I'm just as
specifically, I want you to answer to the whole idea of creating space for more reasonable critics. That's what I want you to kind of respond to.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that there is space for reasonable critics, right? That the issue comes down to whether we are insulting each other's beliefs, each other's sentiments, or don't care about the sensitive issues that provoke us, right? So criticizing ideas is one thing, making fun of somebody is another. And I'm not saying that we can't even have space for parody and stuff like that. I'm all for freedom of speech. I'm all for having parody to make a sarcastic point. But I mean, the only thing that I'm not comfortable, at least associating myself with, is making fun of people or their beliefs, or creating or riling people up, especially emotionally disturbed people. So I mean, I'm not me personally. I wouldn't involve myself in that. If somebody else wants to do it, I think it's a free world, and that people should just ignore it if they find it to be offensive. But as far as it creating space to criticize the religion, I guess I could see what you're saying. That you're trying to say that
like I'm saying, even what I'm doing is considered like worthy of being killed. Not, I don't want to over exaggerate the whole killed thing, but let's be clear. Like for the most part, I don't do this shit. Like I don't make jokes and mock and stuff like that. For the most part, sometimes I do a little bit, like we do style. Like, you know, Muhammad is Allah's favorite prophet. I made a video on that, and you know, stuff like that. But I don't do a lot of it. Mostly, I have a blog. I'm critical. I'm talking about specific things Muhammad did or is known to have been doing. And even then, I had people try to get me fired. So I was basically, people try to cancel me before that word even existed. Canceled. I had Muslims call up my office and tell them that I'm a bigot. I don't even know exactly what they said, but they basically said that I'm a bad representative of the company and I should be fired from my 9-to-5 computer programming job. That has nothing to do with any of this stuff. And they didn't even know about this until someone called them up, and I had a bunch of people call them up. So without Charlie Hebdo, people like me are Charlie Hebdo. That's what I'm trying to say.
I see what you're saying. I mean, you know, if there are people in the world who want to push the boundaries, you know, that they can go ahead and do it, right? And if it helps, I guess I can see what you're saying in the sense that it allows for people who are actually criticizing religion without offense, that it creates space for them in an easier way, because people see the disparity between the extreme natures of how we can be offensive. But I agree with you that if people are going to find the things that they find offensive and try to threaten people, try to cancel them, I think that all of that is disgusting, and I think that it's messed up. I mean, that's all that I can say. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have people in this world who are making these cartoons or doing offensive things. You know, I think that they should have the right to do it, that they exist, and we have to deal with it by either ignoring it or having thicker skin. You know what I mean? It creates an environment for us to have thicker skin as well. So that's kind of what I think. Mukunda, if you want to add anything, you're more than welcome.
I mean, I'm pretty much on Farhan's position here. I mean, I do think Armin or Armin has a very unique place in the global dialogue of criticizing religion and being somewhat of an iconoclast, right? That's kind of his role. In some sense, he's like the Milo Yiannopoulos of atheism, I guess. You know, his job is in some ways to provide, to provoke. I get it, and I get the need for it. It just there's. I think that he could have done it other ways, but I'm not someone to judge. I'm not a fan of what he did. Again, or nor just like Farhan, I'm not a fan of tearing the Quran or disrespecting. It's not something I would do. But again, I'm not in their position. I'm not in a position to have been a Muslim, to have felt so oppressed by something, if that's how you guys felt, that you guys needed to break free of it. So it's a very different emotional experience, and you get catharsis through different things, right? So I'm not going to judge him on doing it. I just think there would have been a better way for him to prove it, because I don't think this particular image or this particular iconography did anything more than try to piss people off. It wasn't a point he was making. You could have, if his point was like, every human being is an emotional wreck and will attack me, then that everyone freaking knows that. I mean, you're not really proving a point.
Yeah. So about yeah. Go ahead, sorry. Intro.
Yeah, one more thing. I think the slight difference that Mukunda and I have, we're pretty much on the same page. The slight difference that I have is that I won't go as far as saying that Armin should have or shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Right. That's literally his prerogative. Right. And there's, there's always going to be two sides of things. You know, like in the Black Panther movie, you had Black Panther and you have Killmonger. In X-Men, you have Professor X and you have Magneto.
Sure.
In real life, you had Dr. King and you had Malcolm X. You know, there's going to be two approaches. There's going to be one that is violent, one that is aggressive, and you're going to have one that's peaceful. And I think that both, when it comes to the human condition, in terms of trying to get a point across, I think both temperaments can be helpful in their own way. And so if Armin wants to do what he wants to do to make a point, go for it. You know what I mean? And then he can deal with the consequences of that. As far as I'm concerned, in my approach, all I could ever want is to have peace with people, right?
Yeah.
I want to see more and more unity, more and more peace, and one love, type kumbaya, whatever you want to call it, make fun of it. That's my approach. I truly and genuinely believe in that. But I'm not here to tell Armin to do something or not to do something. That's his prerogative.
Farhan, I actually agree with you that way. I'm just saying should as something as a moral quandary for me.
Sure.
People can act as they want, right?
I wanted to add something real quick. It's just the thing that disappointed me, and I say disappointed because, this is my heritage. Like, these are my people, and I take pride, in Hindustan and Indian people and Hinduism and just the culture, everything. And it's just like when I see them react this way and use terms of bigotry, it's not necessarily the reaction that I'm concerned about. I understand people have emotions and feelings, but we have to talk about the positives that came out of this. Like, we saw like what they really feel. We saw that they would draw 9-year-old Aisha. I saw some people trying to talk about that. Let's sexualize 9-year-old Aisha. And it's like, have you lost your mind? Like, you want to sexualize a 9-year-old girl? And I know these are like trolls and everything like that, but it's just, it revealed a lot when they want to put us in the category like us in the West, like Robert Spencer's article displayed, Abrahamic atheists. What I want to tell to those people is that even if I grew up a Hindu, I love American culture,
Mhm.
and I love American culture so much. I probably would not be a practicing Hindu, living. It doesn't matter if I was ex-Muslim or not. What I'm trying to
Mhm.
tell you is that, you don't have to say that it's my Abrahamic mindset, because I think this builds the road to bigotry, and bigotry is what we're concerned about here. And just in my opinion, I'm not really concerned about reactions, but how are they going to categorize us if the next ex-Muslim does something worse? Are they going to group us all together and gang up on us and go to the authorities, try to shut us down, silence us? What are they going to do? I mean, why are they coming up with these terms? And I really do think there's a connection with Robert Spencer and these followers.
Well, I mean, just a little pushback on this, because we do talk in terms of Western civilization, right? We say, oh, democracy, liberty, freedom of speech, enlightenment values are Western civilization. So it's not as if like we're talking as new terminology. So I think the issue would be a lot of on the Hindutva or Hindu side would be like, well, Western civilization is essentially Abrahamic, and much as that's happened over the past 1,500 years, whether it's in Europe or Middle East, is as a direct result of the interaction. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Why say that? Why use the term Abrahamic? Like, is it that much of a big deal?
Well, I mean,
to distinguish ourselves. I know it's a term for like to distinguish between us, but
it's a term to distinguish worldviews, right? Like how, for example, how did atheism develop in the West is very much a product of the religions that it was dealing with, right? When you have the Catholics and the Christian, I mean, the Catholic, the Protestants, telling when they took power, they would kill the other entire group of people, oppress them, or vice versa. In the Islamic world, Shias took power, Sunnis would suffer, and whatever it was, right? That created a world that with atheism was and secularism was absolutely necessary for people to live fruitfully. Now, in the Indian tradition, historically speaking, you would have Buddhists, Jains, Jivikas, everyone living there. A king might be a Hindu king, but he patronizes Jains, he patronizes Buddhists, he patronizes every religion with his community, because his job, or her job in some sense, was to be governing them all. So necessity of secularism as we see it in the West is different in India, or historically in India. That's what I'm saying. Well, why that demarcation occurs.
Can I say I think we need secularism more than ever in India. Like someone mentioned in the comments, like even, for example, the whole lynchings about eating beef and stuff like that. Like we need secularism more than ever, and even in the context of India, don't you think? Because without secularism, you may have space for Jains and whatever, but do you have space for Muslims to eat beef, for example? Some people.
If you want to talk history, yes. So the first Muslim group of people that came to India was around the same time as Mohammad. So they came to Kerala. The oldest mosque in the world is actually in Kerala. So that mosque, or second oldest mosque, is around 6th and 7th century CE. So it was the first Arab traders right after, right around the time of Muhammad. Before, I think, the Medina-Mecca trip. I forget that story. But they came there and they built a mosque. And when they were there, along with the Jews, along with the Zoroastrians around the same time when they came, they were given their own area. They were like, okay, in this area, you could practice your faith fully. But when you come to the common space, we all have to abide by the same laws. So the idea is, in these communities, you do what you want. Like, for example, the Farsis, the Zoroastrians, who have been there for 1,200 years, have lived completely with their own traditions. The Jews have lived both in Mumbai, Kerala, and other parts of India, have been there for 12, few of them since the 8th century, few of them since like the 5th, some from 800 years ago, have lived there completely until recently, until the law of return for Israel, with no oppression. They went back only because they have Israel again. So what I'm saying is, there is that space, but I do agree, in this day and age, secularism of the Western kind, as in clear demarcation between state and religion, is absolutely necessary.
Wonderful. I totally agree with that. Sorry, someone else want to say something before I jump in?
Yes, I mean, I was going to add to it. So, on one hand, there is secularism that could, where you separate, temple and government and its policies and so on and so forth, and give everybody equal rights and all that kind of stuff. I think that that's perfectly fine. But I think that nationalism isn't the nationalism within Bharat, and Mukunda can know better than me on this, but the nationalism that is in Bharat is rooted in a history, just like the nationalism of any nation, right? And I go back to the notion that, listen, there's a lot of liberal types who are even globalists, right? Forget about national identity, forget about heritage. But there are plenty of people, whether you go to Mexico, whether you go to China, whether you go to Jamaica or any other part of the world, where there's a sentiment of pride of where we come from, of heritage, of founding fathers, of what happened to us historically, and so on and so forth. And I think that is, as long as there's no supremacy there, as long as doesn't become us versus them, in group versus out group mentality, as long as those elements aren't there, that heritage can be celebrated, right? And so the reality with Bharat is that its heritage is inherently what we can call Hindu, right? That the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, that these are inherently a part of the ancestry and the heritage that's there. And it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with, religion versus the state as much as it does with tradition and history. And so, we would have to put that into the equation as we think about how to best apply and appreciate secular values.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, okay. Intro is back. I was just gonna say we lost him.
Sorry.
Just you're back. You just lost you for a second there. So for those of you who are listening, we're just hitting the 90-minute mark, so we're gonna try to finish up now. I want to thank everyone for joining us and for this great conversation. Those of you who are new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. Click join now below to give some financial support as well if you're willing to do so and can do so. That would be most appreciated. And join the Abdullah Samir team. Those of you who are listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever, please do leave a positive review for the podcast. It's, I think, number 34 in the Islam category, so I'd love to get it up there among the Zakir Naiks and the Noman Ali Khans and stuff. So people that are looking up podcasts on Islam will find Abdullah Samir podcast and hear all of these great conversations. So I would really appreciate that. And all of us here have channels as well. Mukunda, do you want to share what channel you have?
Yeah, if you just want to Google Meru Media, MERU Media, MEDIA, we have YouTube and general podcasts. We generally discuss scholars and things like that. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I'll add the link as well. And IntrovertedSmiles, you have a channel as well.
Yeah, I'm just IntrovertedSmiles. I've been around. I'm not looking to be popular. I have low quality.
You're doing something good. So I love to share your content. I watched a conversation you had. I think it was with, I forget the name, Deborah. Anyway, so it was a good Debbie. Yeah. So it was a good conversation, and sharing the stories of how you guys didn't get avoided interest, and it's good. You have good content. So when you're doing something good, it's okay to self-promote because you're putting effort into this, you're putting time into this. So when
I'm promoting Abdullah Samir here. He's the future. Just don't look at my channel. But anyways, just real quick though, I am gonna talk to a Pakistani ex-Muslim who's living in Pakistan. We're not gonna reveal where, but that'll be interesting because I get a lot of criticism of like, oh, you have a Western mindset being an ex-Muslim. And so he has the Muslim state mindset. So I just wanted to promote that. I'm going to be doing that on Tuesday.
Wonderful. And, we are all allies working for a better world. I think I would include Mukunda in this as well, because as you can see, you're actually pro-secularism, you're against blasphemy law. Hell, you're my brother. I don't care if you're Hindu or what you are. I mean, the world I want to live in is a world where I don't give a shit what you believe. Like, you believe, you don't believe, it doesn't matter.
You told me not to cuss, and then you just say that's word. No, but hey, thank you guys.
The rules only apply to you guys, not to me.
But thank you. It was a great conversation, guys. I really appreciate that. We should do more of these kind of things. I think it's really important.
Yeah, before we leave, we'll take a few questions. But Farhan, do you want to plug your channel as well? You haven't made any videos in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see myself as a YouTuber, I guess. the way YouTubers think of themselves, where they're creating content and whatnot. I like having conversations, and I support causes. That's the way it is. If you want to look me up, I'm Farhan
Awesome.
Qureshi.
I'll add the links for everyone. Okay, so talking about questions, people have some questions in the comments. One of them was about the beef laws. So I'm a believer that if you don't want to eat beef, don't eat beef, but don't stop other people from eating beef, especially because it's part of Muslim culture. Like, I'm actually someone that's ethically vegan. I believe that, veganism is better for the world and better for animal rights, and it's ethically superior and it's better for the environment, and on and on and on. I still eat meat, but I do think this is a better way. That being said, if someone wants to eat meat, and there should be no problem with that, in my opinion. That's just my take. So I think that this is, I do know that there's a lot of misinformation about the world beef ban in India. I know that it's not all states have a beef ban, but I do know that I don't know. You guys tell me, you might know more than me. I don't know. Mukunda,
it is funny though. India is like the second largest exporter of beef in the world, next, like, I feel like Brazil. So it does.
Muslims doing that? Muslims are doing that?
Yeah, it's mostly Muslim businesses that do it. Yes.
But it's problematic in the country for people to eat meat, right? Beef.
Well, it depends on where you are per state. Like, if you go to Gujarat, you can't find any beef. But I think in Tamil Nadu you can find it. You can find it in Kerala, Bengal. You can find it. Each state has a different law concerning it. Most of these issues actually tend to happen within the UP region, which is Uttar Pradesh, which I think does have a beef banning law. So yeah, I mean, I'm generally not in favor of these kind of laws. And yes, I'm much like you, Abdullah, that I do believe that either vegetarianism or veganism is probably the most ethical form of living. But that being said, people are free to eat what they want to eat.
Beautiful. Okay. You guys want to add anything to that? Or should I just go to the next question?
Farhan, I think, might.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with both of you guys. I think that people should have a freedom to do what they want, consume what they want. But ethically speaking, I mean, I don't know about the cow if in a special status and stuff like that in India. But if the one point that is often made in the Hindu community that I sometimes hear is that, okay, do you guys have problem with people eating dogs and cats, right? And so, again, it's an ethical problem. I don't think that we should necessarily criminally prosecute people who are eating dogs and cats, but I think that there are plenty of animal lovers who probably would want to criminally prosecute them.
Yeah, I think the difference with the dog and cat thing is that it's not part of the culture in Canada and the US. I don't think Canada banned dog or cat meat to eat. It's not illegal, I don't think, in Canada, maybe in America, but it's not
federally illegal. It might be state to state. Again, U.S. is very much, the federal government won't ban this stuff.
Oh yeah,
it'll be state to state.
Yeah. So my counter to that is basically, Farhan, that but it's not part of the culture here, and so it makes sense. Although it should be open, I guess it's kind of weird. It seems weird to me, but in India, the problem is it is part of the culture for many people to eat beef, and so the minority has a problem there. I want to go to the next question, which I think this one guy is obviously what you would call an anti-Muslim bigot. And he's saying, you guys are too politically correct. You guys will be begging for CCP China style solutions when Mimis, meaning Muslims, cause problems. What do you guys want to say to that? What does he mean by CCP style solution? Do you guys want to talk about that?
I think he's talking about the Uyghurs. And I think that's an idiotic comment. It's very much, it's not about political correctness. It's about human decency and human value. So if you don't recognize human beings are diverse, and yeah, some of them can be terrible, but are you okay with little children being treated that way? That to me is just it's a non-starter. I mean, that's just non-starter.
I just want to say that this is a positive that came from this whole situation. It's like we get to filter out guys like these, that are anti-Muslim bigots. And it's so funny. Like, I'm defending Muslims. I'm an ex-Muslim. I speak about Islam like almost every day, and yet I will protect the dignity and honor of a Muslim. I'm not afraid to say that. We have family members, we have friends that may be Muslim. They're human beings too, and we have to protect them from these anti-Muslim bigots.
Right, and I'm 100% with you, IntrovertedSmiles. I'm not Muslim. I grew up practicing the religion. I adopted a Sunni version of it eventually in my life. And I stand by Sunni Muslims as well. You know, I stand by Muslims in general as well. If there's bigotry toward that is being that Muslims are being targeted with bigotry, then I oppose that and stand up against it as well. And I agree with what you said earlier, Introverted Smiles. I think that elements of fascism and bigotry in general, not just towards Muslims but anybody, is a problem in society, and it's okay to label it and specify that this is bigotry coming from this group, or this is bigotry happening in this country or that country. And I think that it's perfectly fine to specify that this is a unique kind of fascism, that this is a unique kind of anti-Muslim bigotry that is unique to America or unique to India or unique to China or where have you. And all of it should be opposed. I think, you know, my sentiment is that the all of the conservatives and traditionalists ought to be on their own bigots, on their own fascists, right? Rather than liberals and Democrats complaining about fascism amongst the right, Republicans should be on that. Rather than liberals and Muslims complaining to people in India or about India, it should be the BJP and people who have pride in their Indian heritage and their Hindu heritage who should be countering their own bigots and fascists. And there needs to be something like that, and unfortunately, there's not. And same thing, like the left should be critical of its own extremists as well. But there's none of that, and there should be.
Yeah, I mean, no one should ever be oppressed or penalized for belief or an idea. I mean, it's for actions, right? If your actions are violating human beings and human freedom, that's when you should be held accountable. But ideas are ideas. They live in our minds, guys. I mean,
yeah, like you shouldn't be punished for your beliefs or your identity, whether you're gay or whether you're color of your skin or anything like that. Would you guys want to live in a full enforced Sharia state or a CCP? Frankly speaking, like from my perspective, I think most of us, these are both fascist options.
Why are they my only two options? I mean, there's a lot going there. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not into Socratic dialogue with you. I don't need you to tell me this.
The devil or the deep blue sea, guys, pick one. All right, so I think that's all the. I mean, there's definitely gonna be more questions, but I think we've kind of covered this. Do you guys, if anyone want to add if any of you would like to add any final comments, would you guys? Oh, there's a question for you, Farhan or Mukunda. You guys want to? What does Shana or Dashanas you guys follow associate with?
Farhan, go ahead.
Right. So I mean, I would say that philosophically speaking, Advaita Vedanta, although my sadhana does include Buddhist practice of vipassana or mindfulness, if you will, although there are yogic practices as well. But in terms of philosophical approach, I would say Advaita Vedanta, which is basically monism, right? Non-duality type of approach.
Yeah, I belong to what's known as Vishishta Advaita, which is qualified monism. So as for my sadhana, I'm much more, although Vaishnavite in many ways, I'm a big Shakta. I'm a goddess worshiper too. I do love Shiva, but the one I tend to go along with is more Krishna and Vishnu.
All right, thank you guys for answering that. Okay, thank you all for coming on. Any final comments anyone wants to add about this whole thing? Please speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, I think this is great. You know, we should do more of these. You know, I think it's the first time I've seen a dialogue between Hindus and Muslims or ex-Muslims in this sense in a larger context, and I truly enjoyed it. So thank you for the opportunity, Samir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for having me on. It was great to see all of you, and you know, I troll a lot, you know, so just keep that in mind to the Hindus and the Muslims. But there's a reason behind it. You know, I have a deep love for you guys. I really do. I really want to see an enlightenment among all people. And if you need to enlighten me in the process, please enlighten me, because I don't think atheists have the truth. You know, they put this stigma on atheists, like we think we're superior, and it doesn't work like that at all. Like I could be wrong about something. A Muslim could have a right over me, or a Hindu could be right over me, you know, anytime, any day of the week, you know. So please, like, I troll, but I do that to provoke and further the conversation to enlightenment.
Farhan, your final comments?
Oh, no, I appreciate you having me and inviting me, Abdullah Samir. It's always wonderful seeing both you and Introverted Smiles. I check in on your channels regularly. I try to stay in touch with Samir as much as possible. I can get busy at times, but I do enjoy your content, and I appreciate you guys. And I appreciate how you guys are pushing the conversation, helping the conversation evolve, and that's what I want to see. And it's awesome to see that. Mukunda, it was absolutely awesome meeting you.
Yeah, man, you too.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever met before. I don't think we have.
No, I
But
think I
your
emailed
insight-
you a while back to have a conversation, but we never got further than
Well,
that.
okay, definitely. We ought to have a future conversation. But no, absolutely, man. I absolutely love where you're coming from and your knowledge and perspective that you shared today.
If you guys are ever down in Southern California, give me a ring. We could have a beer or 10.
For sure, for sure.
Thank you, Mukunda, Intro, Farhan, all of you guys. Mukunda, I really appreciate your Hindu insights, and as well Farhan and Intro as well. Your perspective was very helpful. And my final comments are, we all want the world we want to live in is a world where your identity matters less, your belief, your religion, your caste, your race, none of that, the color of your skin, the color of your eyes, whatever, whether you like Star Trek or whether you like Star Wars, none of that should be a cause for discrimination, for mistreatment of people. We want to live in a world where you can be you. If you want to pray 5 times a day, you pray 5 times a day. It doesn't matter. You want to wear hijab, I support you in wearing hijab. That's your choice. But of course, your rights, my rights begin where your rights end. I will not be wearing hijab. I will not be following Islamic law or any sort of that stuff. I will be following secular law. And I think that's the world that we are working for, all of us. And we want to get rid of blasphemy laws. We want a world where everyone can be themselves and can actually, even if you want to practice your religion, you can practice it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. For those of you Hindus who I offended, I apologize for offending you and for this whole thing. But of course, we're hoping that this has been a constructive exercise for all of us. I've made some mistakes myself, and I think all of us have kind of learned from this whole situation. And I hope that things will calm down. And we, in the future, just like with Charlie Hebdo, there was a crisis and cities being burned. This time, there's no cities being burned, but there's Twitter being burned. Hopefully, next time, if something like this happens, people will just live and let it go. And they'll just, things will go on. I'm hoping that's the world, that's the direction we're going to keep going in. And that's all I have to say. Thank you to my special guests. We'll do this again when the next crazy thing happens. I think it'll be a good time to talk about it. Until then, everybody stay safe and see you again. Bye.
All right. Bye.